Hi, welcome back, everyone. We are here and we are doing pre-recording for y'all. Unfortunately, we can't do it live, so we're just going to do it now and get the show out to you. Today, to continue with the Batman theme we've been doing all month, excuse me, we're going to be talking about just some miscellaneous Batman things, not so much about the movies, but about some shows, video games, and we're going to decide on which things we would want to see in this new Batman movie from these shows and games and comics and such. So we're going to be doing that, and I'll start off with the animated series, Batman the Animated Series. Came out shortly after the Tim Burton Batman movies. And yeah, I this is one of my favorite Batman iterations of all time. I think we can all agree with that. I think that it's one of the best Jokers of all time. I would say I would want that type of Joker into this Batman, but obviously it looks like Riddler's the bad guy. So I guess this is where I would not want the Riddler from the animated series compared to the one we're seeing in the trailers. In the trailers, he looks a little bit, darker, scarier, more threatening, rather than just the goofy guy in a green suit and bowler hat.
Yeah, I feel the animated series did that take on the Riddler about as seriously as you could, which isn't very serious, but it's certainly more so than Jim Carrey.
Right.
Yeah, it just kind of begs the question, as far as the animated series goes, is with the development of each of the villains, it's kind of a hard thing to justify this guy wearing a bowler hat, green suit, and not be a little bit crazy. Because you look at someone like Two-Face, and it makes sense. They build up the character, you see how he's made into this kind of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde scenario, but it's on all the time. And you kind of have to think, well, what's a different take? And they still had to be somewhat child friendly. And with the new iteration that we're seeing in the Batman, as far as it goes, it looks more like, let's see, what's that?
Zodiac Killer?
Zodiac Killer, thank you. Where it's more mystery, like you don't exactly know who he is. He's mysterious in his riddles. It's not as obvious as it seems. So I think that is a good thing. I tend to agree that I'm glad that we're not seeing just the goofy side. If we wanted that, it would make sense to hire somewhat of a comedian, maybe not Jim Carrey, as we've talked about in the past. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I'm not bashing on the animated series because I feel like overall they did their villains really good. Some of the best stories for the villains are in the Batman animated series, in my opinion. Like you said, Two-Face or Clayface, or you don't really know Joker's story, which is fine. That's what people want.
It redefined Mr. Freeze's story.
Mr.
No one remembers
Freeze.
the old one out. He's just a guy who robbed banks because, ice. Yeah.
He's evil. Yeah. Now this shows the one who came up with his wife.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think it did him all justice.
For it, yeah.
Yeah. From what's the movie Heart of Ice?
Yeah, Heart of Ice.
Yeah. We'll include that.
That's the episode.
What's it?
Sub-Zero is the movie.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. No, I definitely, even the most bizarre villains like the guy with the clock,
The Clock King.
King, like even his backstory, as ridiculous as he is, even his backstory was well fleshed out. Like, oh, I see why he's a grumpy, crazy guy. Yeah. He's kind of got OCD for time. Got to be punctual. And then the one day, the mayor tells him to not be punctual and just take it easy. His life goes to crap. You just have to see that episode. But I hope they incorporate that into this Batman movie, just giving him a good backstory that's like, I get it. I get why they're a bad guy. And I get that they're also a little insane. Because that kind of goes with all of his villains. They're all a little not there. Or something happens to them so that they're not all there. Like Clayface or Two-Face.
Yeah, one thing that's important to me, comparing it to the Batman animated series, is we're starting off with the younger Batman in the Batman. And in the animated series, I feel that Batman's main mission isn't just a war on crime, but it's to take people out of the darkness and bring them back to the light. And anyone who gets in his way, he'll pummel. but he's not looking for an excuse to just go out there and pummel people. Whereas Pattinson is at that point, I think. So I hope that they transition more along that line where he's that symbol of hope, somebody who's trying to bring people out of the darkness, trying to redeem people instead of just looking for an excuse to pummel people. And it's fine that they're starting out that way, but I think one of the reasons this Batman resonates, besides being insanely accurate to a lot of the lore, is the fact that he is inspiring enough that he can be a part of the Justice League, and he believes in people and he has faith in the good in people, with obviously the exception of the Joker, that people ought to be reached out to, that they can be redeemed. He does this time and time again. He gives Mr. Freeze a chance, he gives Two-Face a chance, he gives Catwoman many, many, many chances. So I hope that we get to that point, but with the Batman as he is now.
You know what I hope
What
they
it can be.
Yes, I agree with that. But one thing I just thinking about it is one thing I hope they don't do is just drastically change the style halfway through their movies.
Yes.
How Batman animated series they drastically change everyone's design.
Some of the redesigns really work. Like I love the
Not Mr. Freeze.
not Mr. Freeze. Scarecrow worked
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me.
that was
And
cool.
getting rid of some of the color on Batman, that worked. Joker looked like Mickey Mouse, and Mr. Freeze was ridiculous.
Yeah, like the two coolest villains.
Mr. Penguin looked really forgettable. Mr. Penguin?
Yeah.
The Penguin.
Mr.
Really
Popper.
forgettable.
Mr. Penguin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's true. I tend to agree. Like Harley hardly went through a change.
Catwoman, holy cow.
Catwoman went through, yeah. Bad choice there. Poison Ivy kind of added more of that green tone, so I was okay with that, but I did miss the original look there. But some people, like Ed points out, didn't suffer too much, but when they did do something too drastic, it was very obvious. That wasn't the best of ideas. Thankfully, the voice actors stayed relatively all the same,
Yeah.
and the performances were good. And for the most part, some of the stories were good. They did start to decline, unfortunately.
Right. They were trying to make those stories more compatible with the Superman show that started running, and
leading up to
like
the Justice League.
Yeah, the universe should definitely be compatible, and like the technology should be about the same level. But I don't think you need to have the stories and the tone be the same.
No.
Superman and Batman are very different characters. Their stories should naturally be different.
Yeah,
I agree.
and that's the problem that they had with BVS is you need to separate the two. Like, you really understand Batman, but you really are not getting Superman. And the same thing could be said for the series, though I obviously think that they did way better with the series, even with that change of tone and everything.
Right.
Something that I really appreciate from the Batman, I think I may have mentioned it the other day, it's the first one that looks like cinema. It's not like a painting like Burton. It's not like a photograph like Nolan, and it's not like a comic book like Snyder. It looks like this is cinema. This is the cinematic experience for Batman. And it borrows a lot from the animated series, The Red Skies. I think Aaron mentioned that in a different conversation. It has the red skies, it has the dark saturations and things, the perfect lighting, shadow, contrast, all those things are really borrowed from the animated series. There's been a lot of tributes and comparisons to the animated series, which is a very good sign for the Batman as a whole.
It looks kind of like The Godfather, in that every frame just looks like it's painted with shadows. And that is something that was also in the original Batman animated series, because it was drawn, instead of using like white paper that are going to color on, they started from a base of black. And so the default is always darkness, shadows. It's looming over you all the time. You can take it out, and just like in nature, the natural state of things is darkness unless there's a presence of light, which will bring out color. And seeing that on the big screen, I wish I could have seen Godfather on the big screen. It's beautiful. And if this is the next best thing I'll get, just in terms of the black and the, I believe the technical term is the chiaroscuro, very looking forward to it.
Yes, absolutely. And it's true is that even with later adaptations in a Batman animated series, we do tend to see these red or purple skies or even green to depict the evening sky, which one that gives a kind of comic book look, but two, it really allows you to feel like it's always dark. Even when there's a little light, it feels dark. And I think we all appreciate that.
Yeah. What about you, Robert?
I really liked what Stefan was saying. I didn't actually watch too much of the old Batman animated series because I wasn't really into superheroes that much around that time of my life. But I did one thing that Stefan pointed out that kind of stuck with me was the fact that crap, now my brain's it was there. How Batman likes to see the good or tries to bring out the good in people, bring light to those to the villains. And made me kind of think to myself, that is what Batman really is. He doesn't want to kill people. He puts them in Arkham. He puts them in prison because he wants to help them. He's not there to get revenge. He's there to help fix the issue, not make it worse, in a sense. Granted, they keep escaping to the asylum, so he might want to rechange his thinking. But that's kind of what the only thought I had on it. But I wouldn't mind seeing that transition from vengeance that you see in the trailer for the Batman to towards the end being a Batman who is there for justice, not for vengeance.
Yeah. And I think we are going to see that in this movie. Because if you listen to his musical theme, there's a lot of brooding and angst, and you get this not immature, but less experienced. This is I'm still holding on to this. But then later in the theme, you also hear this more heroic side. This is like, I need to become not what I want to be because where my parents died, I'm still upset. It's this city needs me. This city thinks that I'm this great thing. I now have to live up to that task.
I mean, that's pretty much what his dad kind of instilled in him. In like almost everything I've seen, animated, live action, his parents instilled in him like you can be the hope for a city.
Yeah, he's kind of like learning what Christian Bale learned from Liam Neeson. It's the best thing you can do is become a legend and realize that if you make it bigger than what you really are, then the impact you can have on everyone will be far greater. In this show, in the prequel series, the prequel book or whatever, it's mentioned that Bruce Wayne doesn't like to be seen in public. Like he's kind of antisocial that way because people see him and they're like, "Oh, Bruce Wayne, oh my gosh, you're the rich dude. You're the Prince of Gotham." And I think that's kind of an interesting take because usually Batman's all suave and all that. And so this time, Batman, he puts on the mask because he doesn't want to be recognized as the Prince of Gotham. He wants to be recognized as, a vengeance at the beginning. So I think that's pretty cool. What were you going to say?
I was going to say something, I'm sure.
Oh, sorry. I knew you were going to say something.
Well,
anyways.
Let me think for a minute. There's something along the lines of how it was something along the lines of how he's transitioning to this character, how he's going to be more centered, and in control of the wrath, in control of his rage, and moving forward. Which I'd say the animated series is pretty well centered from the beginning, and I struggle to find any part where he's like tempted to kill. Like he's certainly tempted to beat snot out of the Joker, especially when he smacks around Harley Quinn in the show. But other than that, he's always centered. So it's interesting to have. We're almost picking up where Ben Affleck left off, where you have somebody who's specifically from BVS, somebody who's looking for an excuse to pummel something, and if Superman falls out of the sky, it's like, great, that's my next thing I'm going to hit because that's how I express my pain, so I deal with myself. And Pattinson picking up where that left off, but that was an older, more cynical Batman who's seen people go to the dark side. But we have a young Batman who's actually, you can correct me if I'm wrong, crime is risen after he showed up 2 years ago, and it's like, what the heck? What, you're doing this wrong. And I think the whole point of the film will be to show him, yeah, you're doing this wrong. This is like, people can get all worked up, like, oh yeah, he's pummeling people. It's like, That's really not the point of the film. I mean, you can enjoy that all you want, but the point is he's wrong, and there's a better way to do this. And watching him become sort of that animated series Batman will be really fun to watch. I think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential.
Hopefully.
For sure.
Yeah.
Hopefully. And I think it's also interesting that through the animated series, we get probably the best take of Kevin Costner saying, "I am the Batman. I am the Justice."
Kevin Conroy.
Or sorry, I'd say Costner. So that would be an interesting take, Kevin Conroy. But especially when he's facing against Scarecrow on the blimp, and he says, "I am the Knight," and things like that. It really makes a huge difference because in the trailer we see "I am vengeance." So if we're right, and it's this transformation, this metamorphosis from "I am vengeance" to "I am justice," "I am the Knight," "I am Batman," then it's going to create a lot of it's going to create a lot of new adversity for him because vengeance is what Gotham is. In fact, that's what I'm going to be talking about a little bit later in my section. But Gotham is vengeance, and that's not what Batman needs to be. Batman needs to be justice, and I think that's going to be really crucial just to any Batman story. It doesn't have to just be the Batman. But yeah, do we have any other thoughts on the animated series?
I think we covered a lot of it.
It's excellent.
So yeah,
Highly recommend.
I would just final note on that is just I liked how it was mature enough, but still child friendly enough. You know, shows like that or Clone Wars or even Avatar, I feel like we're able to reach out to kids with some some dark stories and tones and stuff, but still managed to be child friendly, but it didn't treat you like a child. I really appreciate children's shows that do that.
It's kind of that thing that George Lucas said he was going for with that original Star Wars was, I want to make something for 12-year-old boys. Not because, 12 is like this specific age range or whatever, but because this is about the time in many cultures around the world where you go from boy to man or from girl to woman. This is, you're a kid, it's time for you to graduate, not all the way to like 7 or something like that. The movie 7, not age 7.
Yeah.
But graduate to, the world has problems. There are more serious things. There's not always going to be happy endings. There are sometimes, but we're going to take away just a little bit of your innocence.
It's very reminiscent of old Disney, where Pinocchio wasn't afraid to scare the crap out of you.
Yeah.
Treat you like you're ready for some darker stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of the old Disney films, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty come to mind. And that's what the animated series is to me. It's very similar in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole episode arc where there's kids that are all kidnapped by like Crocodile King or whatever. It's not even like a major Batman villain that I know of. I don't even remember his name, but he has all these crocodile pets. And all these kids are in this underground slave army. It's just like, that's really dark.
Yeah.
Or in the Two-Face story arc where you watch Harvey Dent transform, you're watching Bruce Wayne's nightmares where he's reliving the trauma of watching his parents be shot, but their corpses are looking up to him. Why didn't you save us? You see Harvey Dent with this baseball scar. Why didn't you save me? You see the guilt that's just eating him up every day. You're like, I want the bang pow. This is really heavy.
Yeah. It is. It gets pretty heavy there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
highly recommend it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Watch that shit. All right.
We messed us all up and stuff.
It's like we got Stefan up next.
So today I was going to talk about The Batman, as in the animated series, The Batman. It came out, I believe, 2005. How many of us have seen or are at least familiar with The Batman?
I've seen little bits here and there.
It's hard to see my hand. There we go.
Yeah, so Aaron, Brendan, and I, we never watched the animated series. We may have seen an episode or two when we were really, really young.
Yep.
But our parents, maybe they saw Harley Quinn talk about Joker riding her Harley, vroom, vroom, and we're like, we're not going to let you guys watch that. So we never watched that, but we did watch The Batman. And it was our introduction to animated Batman, besides some of the Justice League shorts we saw. And it's basically very similar to the Batman in a sense because it's about a young Batman who builds his Batmobile is literally a sports car with blue flames that come out of the exhaust, just like in the film that's coming out next week.
That's true.
And it's a young Batman, and they also utilize the red skies. I think that's more a homage to the animated series than anything else. And something that I really like about this show is every episode where a villain is introduced, it's Batman doesn't just lose and the villain gets away. He gets the crap kicked out of him every single time because he's learned slowly but surely. He's a very competent martial artist, competent with gadgets and all that, but he hasn't learned to think his way through fighting yet. He thinks if I hit it hard enough, maybe that'll solve the problem. But there's an episode when he meets Mr. Freeze, it's not just, oh, he froze somebody else. He really gets to Batman. He freezes. Batman has to recover from a cold, kind of like the animated series, but it's more psychological. He's thinking about when he sees Mr. Freeze with the gun, he sees his parents' killer with the gun. And because he was helpless to stop Freeze from, I think he was robbing diamonds, which is what he's known for, stealing ice, I guess you could say. Regardless, it really gets to him psychologically, and he has to think of ways to beat him, so he has to develop a suit that is freeze-proof. He has to use his Batmobile's flames to defrost Mr. Freeze. And then in the Bane episode, Bane shows up and he kicks the crap out of Bruce. Like, Bruce can't punch his way out of this one. He has to think of something else. So he has to develop a mech suit. So I really like the ingenuity of this Batman. I really like the idea that, he's a competent martial artist. And they weren't afraid to take, I'll go into this a little later, but they're not afraid to take very different takes on the villains. And he has to learn to think his way, which is why I think it's a good parallel to the Batman film, because he can't just punch his way through the Riddler. And he is smart, but he has to actually apply that intelligence in order to beat the Riddler.
Were you gonna say something there, Jen?
No, I think my only thing to add, since I haven't seen very much of the Batman, is just that as much as I do love their design for the Joker in the movie, I hope we don't see something that over the top and animalistic in something like the Batman.
Yeah, that's monkey.
I don't want to see a roided out monkey Joker in super grounded Batman.
I remember as a kid, I thought that was cool because
it's very cool. Yeah.
Because beforehand, like Joker in the other shows, and even the '89 movie, he's just kind of the dude in the suit, but and he's smart and all that.
Yeah, he's a mob guy.
You can take him out in like 2 punches. He might have some gadgets that might delay you, but you know Joker's going down. This Joker is like the opposite of Batman in the way that, but he's opposite but the same. In the way that he knows how to fight and do parkour, and he's got his own gadgets. And I mean, I really like that. I was like, oh wow, Joker's actually cool. Right. As a kid, that's all that matters.
I think it's a great new take on the Joker that we really haven't seen anywhere else, but it works in the Batman. And I don't know if it will work in the Batman.
Yes.
The Batman.
I agree entirely. I don't know if it could work. I think some of the aesthetics could, because in the animated, the Batman series, that he wears a straitjacket, which he has made, purple and orange and things like that. So if they wanted to do something similar where he's wearing a straitjacket that he made look like a suit or something, I'm all for that. If they want to give him kind of dreads, some dirty hair because he's not willing to take care of himself.
Heath Ledger was definitely far cry from being like Jack Nicholson.
Traditional.
We could have emo Batman versus punk rock Joker.
Exactly.
Exactly. And that's something that I hinted at was they weren't afraid to go a little different with the characters because once they're established in the animated series, and you could say once they're established in films, you have to go different, which is why Penguin and Riddler are very different than I think so far any version you've seen. The Penguin's more like what's his name, Fredo, than he is like Danny DeVito. And he's more of the mob boss, more of the Italian. Oh, is that right? Hey, who you talking to? That sort of thing.
And he's a fighter too.
Yeah,
he's got that umbrella, and he can
in the
sweep your legs and all that.
Right, right. I was referring to the
Very
movie.
confusing.
Oh, sorry.
No, but
Yeah, no,
it's
the one in
true.
the cartoon. Is
In the
fighter.
cartoon,
And he's got his ninja assassin
Yeah.
abilities.
everyone is pretty much a fighter in the animated
Yeah.
series. They are competent at hand-to-hand combat, which throws you for a loop because it's like the little penguin, little squatty he's red-headed as well.
Hey, I just watched Cyrano last night, and Cyrano by himself, Peter Dinklage, fights 10 other guys with swords and he beats them
10
all.
normal sized people.
Okay,
too.
so
10
right.
normal, and he beats them all.
Yeah.
So I was like,
Oh,
and it was actually well choreographed. I mean, the
Yeah.
believability of one guy beating 10 is not high, and a little person beating 10 guys is less high.
It's outlandish, but it can fit the tone.
Right, and it was choreographed.
It's
So
what we
it was
call moving magic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what.
Kind of like Batman beating up
20.
24 guys in the way.
fun. Right, exactly.
It's very outlandish. But yeah, they weren't afraid to experiment a little bit. Mr. Freeze, his freeze ability comes actually from his
That's
body
like a
rather than a
superpower.
gun.
That's a
Rather than a
mutation.
gun.
Yeah.
Like we said, everyone's basically a martial artist of some kind, and the Joker was certainly very interesting to have him be, because he wasn't a mobster in this version. He's more like the Joker that just wants the chaos, which kind of goes with the times, because 2005 to 2008, we got the Batman Begins and the Dark Knight, and we got this series as well. So people were more leaning on, oh, he doesn't want just some money or just to torture Batman. He wants to torture everybody. And he actually creates Clayface, possibly my favorite version of Clayface. He's this cop who gets the silly putty stuff sprayed on him by the Joker. And he's also the best friend of Bruce Wayne growing up. And he ends up turning into the criminal Clayface because the Joker, first he psychologically tortures him, and then he deforms it. And that's something I always liked. I like the idea that Joker is just sort of this disease that spreads into other villains, and that they did that very well in Dark Knight for Two-Face as well. But I hope that with the Batman film, they'll have that spreading out, because there's always that key component, whether it's Batman, the Joker, or both, and they're just a disease that spreads out all these new villains and challenges.
Yeah, and speaking of which, just going off of just the Clayface story, it is very good because it's this slow buildup. Because, like Steph mentioned, Joker has this new chemical or gas that he calls silly putty gas, and we see him use it to rob a bank so he can fund and make more weapons of mass destruction. And it just immediately melts something. He even sticks his hands in it. So it shows, this isn't an acid, but this is something that just makes you more liquid without these known side effects. And it's more of an accident when it happens, because the silly putty gas, Joker's threatening to use it, but Batman throws something at it, and the gas kind of hits his friend in the face there. But it's really well done, and that's something I appreciated with this show is, unlike the previous show, which it did have its connections, but you could really watch any episode of the original animated series and not have to worry about too many connections. Like there were sometimes a part 1, part 2, but with this show, it was pretty linear. If you didn't watch the previous episode, you'd be kind of confused because you're like, wait, they have this kind of tension or whatever. But talking about the aesthetics of the show, since we talked about the red and the just the coloring with the black paper in the previous show, something I appreciate about this animated series is that you can tell who the character is from their silhouette as soon as you see them. And I also like, if you know art at all, the basics of animation, any character that has a lot of triangular features is always a villain. So it's interesting because if you look at the original animated series, Batman, he has a lot of angular looks, which means he's broad, and which means he's very strong. But he also has some triangular features as well. In this newer adaptation, he's more rounded, which is a feature that you assume with good. Whereas all of his villains, including Joker, which is why I kind of like the dreadlock look on him, is that even though they're dreadlocks, they're very angular, a lot of triangles. You look at Mr. Freeze, they take away the dome that's on his head, and he has this triangular iceberg on top of his head. So it's just kind of cool how they were able to take art and then just be able to use those subliminal messages of round versus angular to show just what kind of character you're dealing with. The exception being, of course, Clayface, but there are exceptions to the rule. Not everything that's round is good, and not everything that's angular is bad. So, just some thoughts on that.
Robert?
So this was actually my first introduction into animated Batman. And it's really funny because I remember this was airing on Cartoon Network, I believe. And my brother and I, back in the days when websites actually had games for kids,
Oh
yeah, we would play the Batman games online on Cartoon Network, and it was a lot of fun. And I liked it a lot because it was kind of gritty compared to like the other one. The other one, you always kind of knew Batman was going to win. This one and the new Batman, or not, yeah, this Batman animated series, I never really knew. Like I was like, okay, yeah, he's going to come up on top eventually, but when is he going to come up top? Like they never really gave you a definite, yeah, he's going to win by the end of this episode kind of thing.
Right.
And same thing with a Clayface thing. It's like, oh, he just goofed and hurt one of his own friends, and now he's created a new villain. But that's kind of what my thoughts were. His actions had a lot of consequences to the future.
Yeah.
Which I'm hoping to see in the Batman as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we're going to see quite a bit of that. I mean, it's just so hard to tell what exactly is going to be in these 3 hours. But then again, it's 3 hours. So, that's a lot of story to push in there.
Yeah, we're all getting excited.
Well, in the newest trailer, too, like they put so much in there, but there's so little. Like I see it and I see all the detective and the markings and stuff, and I'm like, oh, yay, because I really love the detective side of Batman.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like he still is lost. He's still trying to figure it out. Okay, you have my attention.
Yeah. It makes for interesting drama and characterization and growth and things, which is what I'm really interested in. So, any other thoughts on the Batman?
All right. Well, then I guess I will move on to my portion, which is the Court of Owls, which is from the DC Comics, the New 52, as it was called. And honestly, it introduces these new villains in such a way that it feels like they've always been a part of Batman, which is something really difficult to do because there is already such a big rogues gallery. But something that I appreciate about it, for those who haven't read it, I will go into spoilers, of course, but one of the first things that caught my eye was from the very first kind of sentence or inner monologue that Batman has. Is he talks about there's this news column in I think it's the Gotham Gazette, where he talks about how people submit in one word how they would describe Gotham. So the sentence would be Gotham is blank. And for a lot of people, some people, but Gotham is the Joker, especially if he has been on a huge crime spree, or it is Killer Croc, or it's this or that. And he said, one of my favorite ones, of course, is Gotham is Batman. And that's kind of the feeling you get as he's in Arkham. He's having this inner monologue as he's fighting his most popular rogues gallery. And they've all teamed up against him. And he manages to beat them off through some trickery because Nightwing is there, disguised as the Joker. And throughout this comic, just the beginning of the story, you feel like this Batman is the Batman almost from the Lego Batman movie. He's so good at what he does that there's no way anyone can beat him. And it's that sense of pride that really digs into you, because when they start to introduce the Talons and the Court of Owls, which is this urban myth, this kind of legend of Gotham that's been around for at least 100 years, maybe 200 years.
And back to the founding of Gotham.
Yeah, to the very founding of Gotham. And you kind of question it, even as the reader, because you're like, Is it real? Is it something that they've based after the story or the legend? What is it exactly? And that's something I'm hoping that they can incorporate into the movie. Is not necessarily the Court of Owls, but more of building up this legend type of feel. Something that's been integrated. For example, he discovers that in most of the skyscrapers of Gotham, you know, which is based on a real thing, the 13th floor is usually skipped over in skyscrapers because of the superstition. Well, he goes into the 13th floor and always finds a little nest, as he calls it, a Talon's nest, where these assassins for the Court of Owls hang out. And so, it's just something that is somewhat real, but, has a twist on it. And that's something I would like to see personally in the show, in the new movie, is something that is somewhat we kind of know about, or maybe you didn't know about, but then it has a twist on it. So that's something I would personally like to see. I also like the investigations that he does in this comic, as well as its follow-up sequel, is that he does a lot of investigating, and he doesn't always know what happens. In fact, there's a moment where he gets thrown into this huge sewer pit without his utility belt, so he has no gadgets, and he's stuck down there for, I think it's about a week, with no real good food, tainted water that has hallucinogens in it, and it's very dark, very gritty. And so by the end of the comic run, you are in love with these villains because they have done everything to Batman, mentally, physically, and he is barely holding on. So by the time he does manage to get an upper hand on them, you're like, yeah, great, but still, they're still out there. There isn't finality towards it. They're not completely gone. And so something I don't want to see is adapted from this is just this mech suit battle that was at the end of the second half. I was a huge fan of that. If you know the story, Lincoln March. I actually don't mind him. There's a question of whether or not he's Bruce Wayne's brother. I think that's fun to have a kind of an unsolved mystery. But as far as the actual final fight, I feel like they really missed the mark there. But anyways, what are you guys' thoughts?
I always like the Court of Owls, how there's a real sense that like Batman knows Gotham City better than anyone else, knows every nook and cranny of it, and yet these people know better. They are more tied to Gotham than he is. Gotham is Batman, yes, but then as you start getting the story, Gotham is not Batman. Gotham is the Court of Owls. They're older. They've been around here longer. Could you imagine if somebody one day knocked on your doors like, oh, hey, I used to live here. I was passing through the neighborhood. Just wanted to see if I could come in for a second. They come in and they go to a closet you've never seen before. How is there a closet you've never seen before in your house? Turns out this person is evil and they have like a serial killer closet in there. That would be terrifying. And that's the smaller, more realistic version of what's going on here. There's no way that Batman doesn't know this city better than anyone else. And yet when someone does, that's terrifying. Because it's not just that they know them better. What he doesn't know is dangerous, and it's kind of his fault for not knowing all these things. Because it's so out in the open, but he's been dismissing so many of these things for so long. And so I hope if we don't see the Court of Owls in this new iteration of Batman, which we probably won't, at least I hope that one, Gotham does have its own sense of character, which, the Court of Owls is kind of the embodiment of that dark side of Gotham. But I also hope that we do see Batman, his personal failings leading to bad things down the line, especially with the Riddler. Oh, I should have solved this earlier. This is so obvious in retrospect.
Yeah, I agree. I think Scott Snyder, it's a different Snyder. He did some of the best New 52 Batman stories. Not that the New 52 is perfect overall, but I think his Batman stories were definitely good. I think Death in the Family was another one.
That was or Death of the
Family. And, there's these stories with Batman, like Aaron was saying, being a little cocky, like, I got this under control. People say Gotham is Batman. Heck yeah, it is. I'm Batman. I think the coolest thing about that story in particular is basically what you guys have been saying with, there's a huge army of assassins. It's kind of like how Hydra disappeared and nobody in that time period after Red Skull was killed, World War II ended. and Hydra just went undercover and just started controlling everything from behind the scenes.
Mhm.
It's kind of terrifying, like Jed was saying, that Batman thought the city's under my control. Nothing happens without me knowing about it or letting it happen. And if something does happen, I'm going to take care of it. Then one day he finds out, no, you're not in control at all. These people are in control. These people had I think it was his grandpa, great grandpa. They killed his great grandpa. Like, just all these little cool things that they've been doing over the years that are just now showing up, which is kind of a bummer. I mean, if it wasn't a Batman story, it'd be cool if they were still like undercover and Batman was killed or something. He died with the secret of him or whatever.
And that's kind of what the Gotham Knights game is going to be.
Oh,
Yeah, that's kind of what
They're going to be the villain of it.
that would be cool. And then the kids, the Bat family, they'd have to be like, okay, what killed him? Let's say they don't know it was the Court of Owls. They don't know the Court of Owls exists.
Mhm.
I think that'd just be really cool because it just shows how powerful they are if they could kill Batman and nobody and still kept their secret, you know.
Yeah.
That'd be sweet. You know, that's kind of off track, but we're still talking about Court of Owls. So yeah, I really enjoyed this story. I did not enjoy the final battle. I think it was a little anticlimactic.
As far as mech battles go in comics, it's not bad.
No,
It's
not
just
bad.
Placed in the wrong story.
Yeah, exactly. Because the mech battle with him fighting against the Talons earlier.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh yeah, that one was
Like
fun.
they're invading his home.
Yeah.
He's got to pull out his.
That
biggest
was
guns
cool.
for it.
Yeah, don't get us confused. We're talking about the final battle with the bad guy.
Yeah, with
his
Lincoln,
brother.
Yeah, with Lincoln March wearing.
Like a robot owl.
Yeah, kind of a robot owl suit, which didn't look too terrible.
Oh, and they're like immortal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
They're like immortal dudes.
Yeah. There's so many different aspects of the story, and it once again tries to redefine the Mr. Freeze story. I kind of like it for that story, for the story that's being told. I know some people prefer the Heart of Ice, and I like that one too. So I got nothing against either one, but I do like that. Yeah, when I do talk about a mech battle, yeah, we're talking about Lincoln March putting on his mech battle suit, and they're like flying all over the place.
Yeah, it would have been cooler if he just was like kind of like a better at fighting because he's been around longer or whatever, or he's on superhero steroids.
Well,
That's what I thought was gonna happen.
I was gonna say you still have Bruce still broken down from the Weeks battle, underground, and he's had to fight all those other Talons, and so Lincoln is still pretty fresh. He's just back from the dead, and there's nothing can freeze him, which is how they've been kind of defeating the other Talons, is freezing them. So I think there's just so many better ways they could have done that final battle, but they went with the mech suit.
No, but when they invade his house, if they do something like that in any iteration, if they do it in this new movie, let's say Riddler knows who he is in this movie, so he sends some assassins to go kill him in his house. That would be pretty freaking cool if they did something like this.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'm not expecting it, but if they did, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, do it.
Do it.
Some way or another.
For me, everyone said it basically. First part is excellent. The end of the second part is not quite so excellent.
I don't think it ruins it, but
No, but it's not up to par with the first part. There were 4 things I think I had, but I wanted to go off what Brendan was saying. Basically, and Aaron was saying, in the story, he falls down the sewer and he discovers the Court of Owls, and he's left to himself. No gadgets, no resources. And what's interesting about that is he's up there in the city and he's saying, I'm Batman. But being in the sewer alone, no Robin, no Batgirl, no Batwoman,
no utility bill.
It's like, okay, you're Batman. Now what does that mean to be Batman? And that whole court scene where he's down there for a week is easily my favorite part. And there's a specific part that's my favorite. And going back to the Batman film, the first film I feel like should be, okay, find out you're Batman. You have to find out you're Batman. And then the second film should break him down and say, what does it mean to be Batman? Now, it's like, I'm Batman. I can be a thing of Hulk, blah, 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 blah. then the next one challenges him, sort of like the Dark Knight. So what does it really mean to be Batman? And that's something they do really well here. And going back to what Brandon was saying about the grandfather, so the court is basically a bunch of winter soldiers that are 100 years old, and they go around and they kill whoever's convenient for the court. And they take photographs. It's pretty sick. They have a photograph of Bruce Wayne's grandfather. He's very sad. Like all these people are sad, depressed, tears, and gaunt looking people because, you know, they've been drinking drugged water and they're being hunted and they're gonna die. They know they're gonna die. They take a picture of everyone before they kill them. And Bruce, he gets surrounded by the court and he hallucinates and sees things that aren't really there. And just my favorite scenes where he's dying and even he's tearing up and he's broken down, you know. But he focuses in on that portrait of his grandfather's face and he's like, I can't die like this. I can't die like this for him, you know. And it was a nice way to go back to the Wayne legacy without just referring directly to his parents, but to somebody else who suffered under something that's much bigger than his own personal journey or mission against crime, and just him honing in on that personage of his grandfather and being like, enough, and he throws everyone off, and then he finally gets his second wind, and he still gets chopped to pieces. And I don't know how Scott Snyder gets away with basically killing Batman in every single comic he ever wrote ever. Like all the blows to the head and how many times his guts have been rearranged by knives. It's pretty unbelievable that he survived, but it's cool nonetheless to see him beat the Talon or the assassin and drag himself through a pit after he causes an explosion in a very cool way, and then just fall into the sewer. It's like you're so dead from infections and stabbings because this is this freaking sewer. But you know, just that moment is something that I really want to see because it's like, okay, yeah, the Batman, I get it. This is Batman. Okay, I'm Batman. And then I hope because they're gonna have sequels, you know, given that they make back enough money, which I think they will. But they plan sequels. Hopefully the next will ask, what does it mean to be Batman? And they do that so well in just one comic. So that's my take on that. And it's what I hope to see.
Yeah. And honestly, I think the greatest aspect just overall is there's so many twists and turns. Like we find out even Dick Grayson is a descendant of one of the Talons.
He was going to be a Talon. He was going to be chosen by the court.
Yeah, and when you read it, you feel like, oh, that doesn't feel out of place. With what's been established, you could see this happening. So I'm hoping that it's similar to that in this film. It doesn't have to have the exact same things, but rather when it does do a twist like that or introduces a new idea, it feels natural. And that's very hard to pull off. But I think that Matt Reeves and his writers, I think they have the potential to do that. So here's hoping that it's something similar like that in the film. I don't know if you've read the comic, Robert, but do you have any thoughts?
Well, no, I haven't read the comic. It's funny because I'm right after you, and mine is very similar to this. But to talk about the comic specifically, not really the comic, but more of the Court of Owls as a villain group. I really like that concept because, I mean, most of Batman's villains, it's one villain and his cronies.
Yeah.
The Court of Owls is a literal organization, kind of like the League of Shadows. It's an organization of a ton of powerful people versus one powerful guy and a bunch of henchmen that Batman beats up. And it puts the stakes a little bit higher because they control society. And I don't know, I really like that concept. It makes it more of a thoughtful process. Like, how do you take down an organization like this? Because if I do, it could lead to disaster for the city. But at the same time, they need to go away. So it's just curious, that nice little conflict for Batman, who is a detective. He is smart, but this tests his ability to think through a situation. But that's pretty much my thoughts. I haven't read it. But I think it was pretty well adapted into the movie I was going to be talking about. But that's pretty much all I got.
All right, well let's move on to what you're going to talk about then. Don't tease us like this.
I'm going to tease you. All right, we'll see you next week. Just kidding. So mine's going to be Batman versus Robin, and I believe this version of Batman, all the movies that came out with this one, that was based off of a lot of the New 52, wasn't it?
Very much inspired by it.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought so because I actually really like this Batman a lot. Like he is smart. He knows he's Batman. He can for the most part see the big picture. He's just overall like the ultimate Batman. And from what I've seen, that may be an opinion thing, but your opinion's wrong. I'm kidding. It's wrong. But what I like about this movie is that it's a continuation after The Son of Batman, where Damian Wayne gets introduced. And so here we have Damian trying to leave from the League of Shadows of his being taught to kill, and Batman teaching him justice, not vengeance, which is why I brought that up during the Batman animated series, is Batman trying to teach Damian, you're not killing for revenge, you are taking them in for justice. But the Court of Owls sees this as a weakness and then grabs Damian and trying to use him against Batman, which creates this conflict. And just out of a comparison, hearing about how you guys talking about the New 52 comic, he does end up in a sewer. As well, you guys seen the movie, right?
I have not.
You haven't? I recommend it. So,
I've seen quite a bit of it, but not all.
okay, yeah, I highly recommend it. So he ends up in the sewers, but that was after getting a lead to where the Court of Owls may be hidden. But the same thing, there's fumes and stuff, he ends up getting drugged when he gets into the Court of Owls. And mind you, to kind of show what's going on, as Bruce Wayne, he was kidnapped and brought to the Court of Owls in the first place. I don't know if that happened in the comic.
No.
No? So, yeah, in the movie, he was kidnapped by the Court of Owls, brought in forth in front of him, pulled off his mask, and then started talking to him. They had no idea he was Batman. They were just like, hey, you're one of the rich, you're one of us. He's like, oh, that's great. Thanks, guys. So they're trying to get him to be part of the Court of Owls. And he's like, let me think about it. You know, being the Batman he is, he put a tracker on the mask that he was offered. But when he comes back to the sewers, he gets that drugged. And he starts hallucinating. He sees his parents' death again. And then he sees the shooter walk out, and it looks like him, but it's Damian. And then, like, because this whole movie is about him and Damian just kind of butting heads. Because Damian's like, let me be free. He's like, no, I can't. You're going to kill people. You're a stupid little Shadow League kid. And it was cool, too, because you get to see him go from Batman, Bruce Wayne, being our playboy, to I am Batman, but now I have a responsibility as a father as well as a guardian of the city. And they don't have a mech battle. Matter of fact, the movie ends with them breaking into his house, and he does get in the mech, and Alfred's walking around with a freaking shotgun, which I wouldn't mind seeing that in the movie. Alfred, Andy Serkis walking around with a shotgun. But they start taking out all these guys for infiltrating his house, and then Talion gets Batman out of the mech, and they start beating each other. But that's when Robin and Batman stop fighting and they work together to take him down. Because, you know, he grew up becoming an assassin versus all that. But that's pretty much a quick summary of it. I recommend watching it.
So did Robin, was he offered a position in the Court of Owls at any point?
Yes. So Talion is the one that brought him to the Court of Owls. And it was offered that Robin would end up becoming the next Talion.
Okay.
Kind of a partner.
Yeah, it would, actually.
Yeah.
Alright. I was wondering about that. I was like, I wonder if he just left the League of Assassins, one crazy evil assassin group and getting hooked onto another one. And Batman's in the middle, like, no, stay with me.
Well, and that's the thing, though, is that he was part of the plan to get Batman, which is why he was offered the position. And it's funny because Batman even told him, he's like, either you choose them or you choose me, and this is your choice. And then they start fighting. Damien did pretty good, but he's messing with Batman.
Yeah.
You don't mess with Batman. But yeah, so he found out he was just a tool. He wasn't actually going to become the Italian. He was just there to kidnap Batman.
Right. No, from what I've seen of it, while it is a different take from the source material, it actually looks pretty good. Just from the bits I have seen. Like you said, there isn't a big mech battle with I don't think Lincoln March is in it, is he?
No, I can't remember the name of the Italian.
Yeah, if they introduced his son and then his brother, that'd be kind of a lot.
It would, because they do introduce Damien way before this set. So, but it is an interesting take on it because it does still have a lot of the same elements in there. But I do agree that because of what they established with Damien in the previous film, with Ra's al Ghul being killed by Deathstroke and things like that. While it's not my favorite iteration of Deathstroke, I did find it compelling for the Damian Wayne character to have this be kind of the follow up to that. I think it was a good progression for both his and Batman's story, as well as Talia's for that matter. I think it's a good take. Would I like to see a take where it's more closer to the source material? Yeah. But that's probably not going to happen for a while. And that's okay. I'm very patient.
I forgot to mention, so when you were saying for the comic, when he's drugged, he sees his grandfather, who is part of this whole thing, right?
Right.
So right after, in the very beginning, Batman finds one of those Court of Owl feathers, and it gives a flashback to his childhood, where after his parents were telling him the story of the legend of the Court of Owls. So he kind of knew of this legend as a kid. Yeah. And when his parents were killed, he saw an owl fly above, and he started doing an investigation into the Court of Owls as a young kid. So did that happen in the comics?
Oh yeah. Okay. In fact, that was one of the reasons why he believed it couldn't be real.
I've searched every avenue for this. I have definitively proven it can't be real. Not because he has proof that it isn't, but if he couldn't prove it was real, there's no way it can be real.
Yeah. In fact, he finds a building that he is 100% certain as a child that this is where the Court of Owls is at, and there's nothing there, like no proof of anything. So, yeah, it's nice to see that. See, this comic, if you haven't read it, it's so dense. There's so much to explore with it. We might have to just do a different episode talking about it later. But what are some elements from that film that you would like to see in the new film?
The elements I saw were, it was definitely more of Batman as a character that I want to see. Not necessarily in the beginning, but I wouldn't mind seeing it as it progresses in the movie. But I really like the vulnerability that he has. And we talked about last week of how we didn't get to see much of, was it last week? We're talking about how Batman is Batman because of the death of his parents, which is why he's constantly referencing it, why it's always going back. Because that's his vulnerable state. And you get to see that in this movie, and I kind of want to see it in this new movie as well. You don't have to do a flashback or anything. I mean, we know Batman's story, but just have something to remind us, like, this is why he became Batman. That's what I would like to see.
I agree. I think the vulnerability, even with what Stefan was saying, looking at his grandfather's picture in the comic, seeing others' vulnerabilities and wanting to be able to prevent that from happening. I think that's something that could be really well explored, and hopefully it is explored in the next film. I do like that aspect.
And I don't want to, it doesn't necessarily have to happen, but it would be kind of fun fan service if they have something hinting at a Court of Owls being involved.
Yeah, the sequel. If the sequel was conspiracy thriller, that'd be a great follow up to this psychological thriller.
I agree. I think that'd be fun, even if they just have a simple owl just like turning its head and fluttering past the gravestone or something. I think that would be cool.
It just poops on someone's car.
Yeah, it just poops on his car.
What are your guys' thoughts, Brendan and Stefan?
It's always hard for me to mix in Damian Wayne specifically, just because I'm not a huge Damian Wayne fan. I know some people here are okay with the character, at least, but me, I'm not particularly fond of him, just because I think he's an arrogant little turd who should just drop dead. I mean, he killed Nightwing.
I mean, he did that once.
Yeah, and and that was the best thing he ever did. But, there's a version where he killed Nightwing in the Injustice, I'm pretty sure it was. So, and, he sort of felt kind of bad, but shrugged it off and was like, crap.
It was an accident. It was an accident.
Right. That was a great instant where.
But he did say, like,
in that story,
he's
that was
criminal.
where Batman says, "You killed my son," because Damian Wayne is no longer his son. It worked well as a dramatic moment.
Yeah, but overall, mixing it, he is in the comic, but so is Tim and Jason.
Barbara.
Everyone's in the comic, but
Yeah.
they don't really. The only one who has a fairly large part is probably Dick.
Yeah.
But it was a smart move, regardless of how I feel about Damian Wayne. If you're going to continue that storyline and say, okay, how do we go from the League of Assassins to something else?
Hmm.
And something, because I did see Son of Batman, which it was what they're really good at in these films is they're very good at action, I think, and how fast these characters move when they do martial arts or sword fights and things like that. So that's something I do appreciate from these films. But other than that, I think it was a smart move to go on to the Court of Owls and have their own take on that. And it's totally fine because all of this is adaptation. So overall, I don't know that I have anything other than that to say. It's it was probably a smart move to progress from the Son of Batman to Batman versus Robin.
I do got to say that Damian in these movies, just this entire movie set, I like a lot more than all the other Damians I've seen, like in Young Justice or something like that. What was the Teen Titans movie?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the title. Judas Contract? Judas Contract?
Yeah, I like Robin in that one too, because that's when he's first starting to get into the Teen Titans with those groups from when Dick left, and he's like, all right, fine, I guess I'll join. But they do better with Damian in this movie. Like, he makes him more likable. He's still arrogant, but he's less arrogant as he goes on.
Yeah,
And not to mention, Nightwing kind of beat him up a lot. So
yeah, which is fine. I actually like that. I don't know that as far as going to the Batman film series, I'm kind of hoping they don't do Robin, period. But I don't know that I'm ready for Robert Pattinson to have a illegitimate child. Well, a ward or an illegitimate child out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
yeah.
what I expect from both Court of Owls comics and Batman versus Robin that I kind of hope they don't do.
Yeah, I hope they don't do that in this movie for sure.
I feel
especially,
like
I feel like these stories are for an older,
An established
mature
Batman. Yeah.
Batman that is top of his game. I think, and these are the kind of the curveballs that he gets hit with. Having a son with Court of Owls. Court of Owls to me is kind of like almost an end game like villain for Batman. Like you beating everyone else, Court of Owls is sick of you getting in the way.
Beat Gotham.
Yeah.
So and this is a young Bruce Wayne. We
it's way too
I
soon.
know he doesn't have an illegitimate 11-year-old son.
Yeah.
How old were you? Were you Robin?
I was 16. I was the same age. And him just come out of nowhere and trying to hire an 11-year-old kid who can kick adults' butts believably, like these absolute machines of men, these Hulk Hogan type guys, and these ninjas. It's like, or get stabbed, right here with a katana, and then just. I don't want to see that happen to a child, but I don't think any child could believably pull that off unless it's happened to them before.
Right.
So.
It can happen. Well, I mean, they can't be exact, but like it can be pulled off for a child, but it's really rare.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the exceptions being someone who actually has superpowers, like X-23.
Sure.
Easily. I can believe that any day of the week. But a kid,
she has knives sticking out of her hand.
Exactly. So being stabbed with another one, whatever. But no, I tend to agree. At least for this film, I would be interested to see a Robin later. I'm not sure how,
or how much later.
Yeah, because I do think there is a chance that having a Ward could work. It's just a matter of thinking it out and making it feel natural to the story, as opposed to, Batman's too dark to sell comics. Well, we need to give him a child to be endangered by dinosaurs and aliens and all that stuff.
Like, I think the best way that Robin has been done in the comics is in the graphic novel Dark Victory. It was the sequel to The Long Halloween. It's not anywhere as good as The Long Halloween, because that's one of the best ever, but it is still very good. And so, having seen the first animated movie of The Long Halloween, he's young Batman, but he's still I'm super serious. This is a dark world, and I'll have to face unspeakable things. He's kind of that monster in the night. And then when he takes his kid under his wing, it's Dick Grayson, who has proven himself to be quite competent, not only as an acrobat, but also he figures out how to get in the Batcave and all that. He's like, okay, I can't stop you from coming out with me, but this means I will have to change my approach, not just in how do I go into a fight, what do I represent myself as to Gotham. And so he keeps around Robin, not because Robin is an asset, but because Robin is a good, he leaves a good impression on Batman. He's a good influence on him.
Absolutely. And like for the Dark Knight Returns, I think Carrie Kelly as a Robin works because, one, she's used to gather information and distribute information. She's generally in the vehicle, so she's basically safe unless Superman were to attack, or Doomsday or something like that.
Isn't it past your bedtime?
Isn't it
a school night?
Isn't it a school night? I love that line. But so I think there are ways that a Robin can work, especially if we just see him progressively getting stronger, progressively getting older. And so when he finally becomes more of a Nightwing type character, I think that can work. It's just the believability of throwing a child into danger. It doesn't suit well with most audiences, let's be honest, because the only iterations we have had of Robin in any of the films or the film series is he's an adult. And it's because we as audience members know it would be ridiculous to send a child into battle.
I think they could do a 16-year-old one and get away with it.
Yeah,
it's about the kind of the like the borderline of, okay, I can believe that. I'll buy that.
Some people mature fast. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then again, for the aesthetic of Robin, you do want a shorter person, shorter than Batman, typically. And I guess for real life, you don't want Robin growing up and being taller than Batman. So if they were to hire somebody at 16,
like Matt Damon to be Ben Affleck's Robin. Ben Affleck's big, and Matt Damon's not small, but not as big as Ben Affleck.
Yeah. I don't know how tall Robert Pattinson is.
He's 6'1".
Yeah,
Okay.
6'1".
That's not bad.
He's 1 inch from the comics. So yeah, none of you convinced me for Robin, but if Matt,
I don't think we were trying to.
Okay, what were we trying to? Let's try again.
Well, I'm just saying, yeah. But if the good news is if Matt Reeves decides to do Robin, it will be well thought of.
Yes.
And it won't just be for the heck of nobody has done Robin since Crystal O'Donnell.
And hey, with how long Matt Reeves takes on each one of his Batman scripts, in 2 movies, he may be old enough to have an 11-year-old illegitimate child.
Yeah,
and how long he spends perfecting it, maybe we'll buy it.
Yeah, maybe we can. Yeah, that's our thing. As far as comic adaptations go, I say never, because there is a possibility with the right director, right writer, and right child actor, you could have a good Robin interpretation. Stefan disagrees.
No, well, the problem is it's just this
the likeliness.
the likeliness as well as this version specifically. It doesn't seem to mesh well so far, but Matt Reeves could surprise us first off by making this a hit, and then making the next one a hit regardless of whatever he puts in there, like including Kite Man and the Condiment King.
Yeah, there you go.
So, shall we move on then?
Yeah, let's go on.
All right, so I guess I'm closing us out. The thing that I'm talking about is Arkham Knight. It's probably not the greatest Batman game in that trilogy, the Arkham trilogy, in terms of story. And this is something that I both want and don't want in the Batman, is how they handled mystery. The titular Arkham Knight, he's a brand new original character. We've never seen anything like him. And as soon as he's introduced, it's like, this guy's a lot like the Red Hood. And you start seeing flashbacks to Jason Todd and the process that he went through in the comics to become Red Hood. So he's the Arkham Knight, right? And then guess what? At the end of the game, this big dramatic reveal, he's revealed to be Jason Todd.
No.
Yeah.
What?
If you go back to the original Under the Red Hood story, both in the comics and the animated adaptation, they reveal that he's Jason Todd fairly early on.
Yes.
It makes it less of a mystery of, oh my gosh, who's it going to be? To, we know who it is. They know who it is. Let's watch drama ensue.
When will he reveal himself?
Right.
We already know.
Well, and it's not even so much of who is it. It's more, what is he doing? Why is he doing it?
Yeah.
And it's pretty obvious in the Arkham Knight game. But to be fair, something that I did appreciate is, even though it is Jason Todd, I feel like, for me at least, it was a good way to retell that story within the bounds of this universe, because we don't know the Lazarus Pit exists in these games. It's something that's been around for at least the second game, probably the first game. And two, it is interesting to have this idea of, well, what if he's locked in with the Joker for I can't remember how long, it's like a year or something
like that.
So he's a cellmate with the Joker, who is the exact opposite of Batman. He's gone through a Lazarus.
Not a cellmate. He's hidden in a wing of Arkham.
That's right. That's right.
Joker's hidden in there.
That's right. And he's gone through a Lazarus pit, which means you lose a piece of yourself, whatever that means. We generally think that means insanity. And so, and now Scarecrow is basically taken over this city, and the whole city, not just Arkham City. And you have this insane character who used to do everything that was right, now being tempted to do everything that's wrong because of circumstances and consequences of his mentor.
Right.
And I think that's something that could be interesting, is not necessarily, once again, we're not saying we want Jason Todd has to be in this. Even if he is my favorite Robin, that isn't Carrie Kelly. But seeing the consequences of, oh, you think you can do whatever you want, well, here's the escalation. And Riddler's been kind of shown as that escalation.
Yeah, Riddler is, he's the prince of puzzles. He's you're trying to figure out what's going on. And so I think if it's a pretty obvious solution to what's going on, and if you don't have Batman solve it, then you should at least have the audience, us as the audience, know, okay, this is what's going on. We're feeling this sense of dread as, okay, is he going to realize it? Is he going to realize it? But if you hold off on the reveal, it better be perfectly built up, like no one will see it coming. But something I do hope that they do take from the Arkham Knight games, the whole thing is very subjective. You're always in Batman's head. When he's hallucinating, you totally buy that it's hallucination. Sometimes it's obvious, like you're fighting 100 Jokers. Other times, like spoiler for the game, you watch Batgirl kill herself under the effects of the fear toxin of Scarecrow, and it just destroys you. And then it's not till later in the game, oh, you realize she was alive. You were the one with the effects of the fear toxin. And you feel just as well as see all of Batman's anger, his pain, his frustrations, all of that, his confusion, and then his relief when he sees she's alive. In a movie that is going to be a thriller mystery of sorts, a noir, that is an important aspect to get right. You need to be in Batman's shoes the whole time so that you are confused when he's confused. You realize what's going on when he realizes what's going on. And hopefully the twist won't be as obvious as in the Arkham Knight, but hopefully it will be as well portrayed as it was in Arkham Knight.
Yes.
I haven't played any of the games, and going back to Jason Todd twist, I could pretty much guess just watching the trailer who it could possibly be.
Figure from his past, he was hiding his face and wants revenge for something.
Two-Face? No. but the thing that I have seen in clips, especially the Honest trailer for Arkham Knight, it's pretty funny because they mention the jump scares from hallucination and how it just he shoots the harpoon gun and he goes up and then all of a sudden he gets the crap scared out of him.
Man-Bat.
Yeah,
But,
Man-Bat or Joker.
Yeah. But the thing that I really liked from what I have seen in Arkham Knight specifically is just the toll that because this is what, fourth game?
Yes.
This is
yeah, this is a prequel game.
There's only 3 games.
So
it's good.
It's the end of the series pretty much as far as I understand.
Yeah.
And it's Batman's soldiering on, but it's taken a toll, and I like that he's got. And it's perfect that you have the Scarecrow as the final main villain who's challenging him and using the fear toxin. And it just has a toll. He hallucinates. He sees things that aren't there. The Joker's had his toll. Everybody's had their toll. But just Batman soldiering on with the insanity. And I think that's more along down the line for the Batman. What I might want to see is just, it can't just be like, oh, this has just been a wholesome thing and I've really soldiered on. It's like, no, it has its toll. It can mess you up quite a bit, but you can still soldier on regardless of the toll you have to pay. So that's something I like.
Yeah. I like that. Actually, one thing I do not want to be taken is Scarecrow is the main villain in this game, but we all kind of, if you've played the game, the effects that Joker has done in the previous games to Batman kind of sidelines
The real villain is Joker's legacy.
Yeah, I mean, most of the game, Joker lives inside Batman because he infected him with his Joker stuff that turns Batman into Joker. That's the greatest threat. The fact that what Joker did to him in Arkham City, turning Batman into Joker, that is a greater threat than Scarecrow taking over the entire city, in the matter of hours.
Chemical weapons and
Yeah, but if Batman becomes the Joker, that is a greater threat than Scarecrow. So Scarecrow kind of gets sidelined. I hope that does not happen in this movie. I don't think it will because Joker hasn't even been introduced in this.
He might be in this
universe.
one. There are rumors.
Right, and if he is, that's fine. But as long as he's not sidelining, Riddler.
It's not a third act situation where he shoots the Riddler and says, "I'm the real killer behind it all."
Yeah, that would be pretty.
It was me.
We don't need another Talia al Ghul.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Because that's what it would honestly feel like, unless it was built up. Not that it wasn't built up with Talia, but if it was built up in a way that would make sense within how they establish the characters. Like, for example, Riddler has this great scheme. He maybe has a bomb or something, and he's going to detonate it, but Batman is able to reach out to him because, as we know from the prequel book, they're both orphans. They both have gone through suffering, and they have this intense moment of realization that we are the same.
Not so different, you and I.
Yeah, we're not so different, you and I. And on some emotional level, he convinces Riddler not to go through with it, and that's great. But then suddenly Joker appears and he grabs the bomb. I think that could work,
Something like that. Yeah.
something along those lines. But if it's not like that, it's kind of hard to be outside. It doesn't have to be that exact scenario, but something.
There are ways to do it.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting to be surprised.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whatever they
Unlike
throw
Arkham Knight.
Yes, please.
Right, yeah. Don't shove it in my face and say, guess who it is, because then I'll guess who it is. So they haven't done that, and I'm grateful they have.
Well, you can say guess who it is, so long as there's at least red herrings along the way.
Yeah.
Arkham Knight didn't do anything. It's just, man, I sure hope it's not Jason Todd.
Well, and see, that's the thing is they say it's someone completely different. And because they said that, I didn't think of Jason Todd. So I have to admit, you got me, but only because you lied.
Right. Like maybe if Deathstroke was the Arkham Knight's lieutenant, and then it's revealed that Deathstroke has been killed off screen, and it's Jason Todd taking his place. Okay, sure, but I mean that they kind of ended up doing the reverse of that. When Arkham Knight leaves the story at a certain point, and then it's like, okay, Deathstroke's leading his armies now. All right, you didn't really do Jason Todd or Deathstroke justice.
No.
Oh yeah, Deathstroke's just in a freaking tank. Blows
Yeah, the big boss battle with Deathstroke is a tank fight.
I forgot he was in that game.
Oh yeah. There's a lot I love about that game, but it's very flawed.
We, as you can tell, we've mentioned Deathstroke before. We have not seen a good adaptation. Maybe except in what was it, season 1 or 2 of Arrow?
Season 2 of Arrow, he was great.
But aside
But the
from
rest
that,
of the show, he was very neutered.
yeah, aside from that, we are still waiting for a good Deathstroke adaptation.
Well, I mean, we got to see him in Batman v Superman.
Justice League.
Oh, Justice League. We got to see him in Justice League walking.
The best Deathstroke I've seen so far is in like 5 minutes of Flashpoint movie, which is my favorite Justice League film, hands down, by the way. He's really cool in that. If you want some good Deathstroke, because he runs around killing it, and he dies, unfortunately.
He's only in it for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, but those 5 minutes, I was like, yeah, up to the point where he dies, I was like, that's more along the lines of, to my liking.
I do like those type of stories where it's the heroes, or the people who have the hero superpowers are the bad guys, and the bad guys are kind of the good guys, like Forever Evil. That's good. I like that comic.
That is a great comment.
I mean, it's like, obviously, I don't know.
And hopefully they adapt it into the Batman somehow.
Yes,
It's 3 hours long.
It's 3 hours long. So Lex Luthor,
No
and Batman
excuses.
do not team up to take out Ultraman. I'm gonna be
I don't know. I heard Matt Reeves, he's not even sure how Superman would fit
He's like,
in his universe.
or
Yeah,
you never know with these filmmakers,
yeah.
their lives.
I didn't see the movie, but just from what I've seen of the trailers, it's hard to see people with superpowers in there.
Yeah, because, but then it's like, it's 3 hours.
But
once again, I saw him take talking apes with dual wielding machine guns versus
I never
a
saw
tank on a horse.
That would be
In the post-apocalypse, and totally believable.
I bought it.
You're
so
like, not
I think
only do I
he
buy it,
wants
it's
to.
awesome.
It's awesome.
He did the work to make it believable and make it so freaking
A
cool.
really good
Yeah.
payoff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
So it could work. We're not saying it will.
I mean, he's basically sitting there like Andrew Garfield. I'm not the werewolf. I'm not the werewolf.
So you think there's going to be a bigger connection to the DC universe?
No, I actually don't. But I'd be pleasantly surprised or disgusted depending on how
Yeah, they do it. Yeah.
All right.
Nicolas Cage is Superman.
Finally, with the
Yeah.
long.
Just at the end, he's at like a cafe,
Yeah.
and he looks over and sees Nicolas Cage with his pig.
What are your thoughts on Arkham Knight, Robert?
I mean, it's a fun game. I like it. But you guys have definitely said pretty much everything in regards to like how it was very obvious who the Arkham Knight was. The Riddler games were stupid.
Oh yeah, I really hope Riddler doesn't have any race tracks.
Yeah, but I agree with Brendan. I really hope Riddler doesn't get pushed aside for another villain. Like, oh, that's awesome! Look, they had the Joker in there. It's like, yeah, but he's not actually part of the story. Leave him out of this kind of thing. I mean, we were talking about with the Court of Owls. Yeah, it would be kind of fun to have a little cameo of an owl in there, but that's not enough to push the Joker or push the Riddler completely aside.
No, it's very true because because we already have 3 villains confirmed. You know, we've got Catwoman, who I think is going to be pretty good. Penguin, who we've talked about being more like a Fredo character, which is really interesting and possibly good. And then, of course, Riddler, which we've never seen his face, which I think is an interesting take on him because he's usually out front. I mean, he sometimes wears a green mask, but yeah, you know who it is.
He wants all the credit.
Yes, he wants all the credit.
And that's a thing that I'm looking forward to because you could tell that Penguin's not the main villain in this. It's definitely going to be Riddler, but no villain outshines the main villain, if that makes sense. Whereas Scarecrow, because Arkham Knight's the only game I played out of the trilogy there. So for me, I didn't really have the same experience of like, oh yeah, Joker's the main threat. If anything, it was more of like, yeah, Scarecrow's the main threat, but Joker keeps popping his head in there. There's got to be something bigger to this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. All right, I think that's all we've got for Arkham Knight and just for the Batman in general. Any last thoughts, anybody?
We're gonna go see it.
Yeah.
So
Week from today, we're going to be here with our review.
We're gonna do the review same day?
Same day, right afterwards.
Okay, so it'll be like first impressions, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, first impressions.
For me, I know I won't be able to be like, I liked it or I don't like it until like a couple weeks later. I'm
Right. I typically wait for a few viewings to say, all right, this is my third favorite
Well,
Batman movie.
this may speed up the process because once you articulate some of your thoughts, and
Yeah.
people say things that you may agree or disagree with.
I think you didn't
Huh.
notice.
I actually did like it, or maybe I liked it less than I thought.
Right.
And yeah, that is kind of dumb. Or wow, that is actually really cool.
Yeah.
And because of the thickness of it, 3 hours, there's just going to be a lot to unravel. Just even with what we've discovered with the Court of Owls or either of the animated series, is there's just so much to unpack. So there's some things that we're going to point out immediately, but we might do a second review of it. Maybe this is more of a first impressions type of review.
We may end up seeing it twice, because it comes out Friday, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So if we saw it Friday, had an initial reaction, and then saw it again on Saturday to have, here's, second reaction.
If we only watch it once, it means we didn't like it.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
We
yeah.
only watch it once.
Or if you only, if you watch it twice, either you like it or you didn't get it the first time.
And if our viewers are thinking to themselves, you guys would sit through 3 hours twice? We've binge watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah.
We're used to that.
Watch BVS and Snyder Cut.
These guys can do it. Me, on the other hand, I'm going to be falling asleep, so I'm going to need one of you guys to nudge me and just inject me with Bang energy drink. Please sponsor us.
We will bring cocaine to inject into your jugular.
Just like
I'll freaking turn to Bane.
chips are lost there, your hands off.
Oh, I see
You think you're in charge of the theater? I'm in charge of the theater.
But Robert will be down, and we'll be getting a 5-way view. So we look forward to that next week. Audience, ladies and gentlemen.
And what time do we plan on going live next week? 7 o'clock as usual?
As usual.
Probably 7.
All right. Oh, cool.
We'll be doing that Friday after we watch it.
So I'll actually probably be coming down on a Saturday because Friday night I close at work. Unless you people subscribe and help us out, go to our Patreon. Then maybe I won't have to work there anymore and I can do more stuff down there on time. Just throwing that out there. But yeah, I get off work on Friday. I close. So I'll be coming down Saturday morning. But
All right.
yeah.
So we're gonna watch it Saturday, or you're gonna watch it Saturday. We might watch it without you.
That's fair. That's fair. I'll go in hearing all your negative thoughts and I'll be like, shut up. Shut up. And then I'll have my positive view so I can argue with you guys.
Yes.
Because I'm uneducated. And that's what happens. But yeah, we'll be seeing it. We'll be doing it. And we also have a few other videos coming out soon. We start filming in this coming spring for the Viking Night video. So pay attention for that. We got a few animations as well. Just giving our viewers some heads up since we're not live now. But you guys got anything else?
Nope.
Like, comment, subscribe, tell us what you look forward to in Batman.
Yeah, tell us in the comments. Like and share. Subscribe. And subscribe, please. So I don't have to live in my mother's basement anymore. Kidding.
Hey,
I don't live in the basement. I live in the second story bedroom, the smallest one. Ow. Don't mind me. And this is World of Cinematic signing out. See you guys next week.
Boy.